Welcome to the Global War Watch Network. Today, we're looking at a really fascinating story, something with huge geopolitical implications. We're talking about the sudden, and kind of mysterious, removal of a very powerful American missile system from Japan.
Now, before we get started, if this is the kind of analysis you're into, please do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. It really helps us keep making these explainers for you.
All right, so let's get right to it. The big question is this: why did the U.S. suddenly pull one of its most advanced missile systems out of Japan, right when warnings from China are getting louder and louder? I mean, it just seems totally backward, right? Well, as you're about to see, the answer is this tangled web of high-stakes diplomacy, local politics, and some really big shifts in military strategy.
Okay, first, let's set the scene here. Back in September, the U.S. brought its Typhon missile system over to the Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni. It was for a joint exercise, something called Resolute Dragon 2025. And the plan? Well, it seemed pretty simple. Run the drills, test the system, and then pack it up and go home. Yeah, that's not exactly what went down.
So just take a look at this timeline. This is where things get weird. The exercise wraps up on September 25th. Tokyo goes on the record saying, hey, don't worry, this thing will be gone in about a week. But then it wasn't. Local groups on the ground were reporting it was still sitting there on November 10th. It wasn't until the middle of November that Japan's defense ministry finally came out and confirmed, okay, yeah, it's gone now. We're talking a delay of almost 7 weeks. And here's the kicker: absolutely zero official explanation for why.
So you have to be asking, what exactly is this system that got everyone so worked up? Let me tell you, this was not just some standard piece of military gear. Having this particular system on Japanese soil, that was a huge strategic message.
We're talking about the Typhon Mid-Range Capability System, or MRC. Now, the official line from the U.S. is that it's a tool for rapid wartime transitions. What does that mean in plain English? It means it's designed to be rolled into a hot zone fast to give you some serious firepower, both for attacking and for defending. And what makes it so powerful is its flexibility. It's a two-for-one deal. On one hand, it can launch the legendary Tomahawk cruise missile, the long-range weapon for hitting targets deep inside enemy territory. But it can also fire the SM-6, which is one of the most advanced interceptor missiles on the planet. It can take out enemy planes, other missiles, you name it. It's both a sword and a shield, all in one package.
But here's the number that really got everyone's attention: 1,800 kilometers. That's about 1,100 miles. That is the potential range of the missiles this thing can fire. Now think about this. From where it was stationed at the Iwakuni base in Japan, that range puts major Chinese cities, we're talking political and economic powerhouses like Beijing and Shanghai, comfortably within striking distance. That's a game changer.
And that right there tells you exactly why this was so controversial. This was not some routine military exercise. It was the first time ever, that the Typhon system had been deployed on Japanese soil. And you can probably guess what happened next. Both China and Russia started protesting, immediately and very, very loudly.
Okay, so get this. While this powerful missile system is just sitting there on the tarmac, a whole other diplomatic firestorm is kicking off between Tokyo and Beijing. And the timing? Oh, it could not have been worse.
What happened was, Japan's economic security minister, Sanae Takaichi, described a potential crisis in the Taiwan Strait as a survival-threatening situation for Japan. Now, that phrase might just sound like strong words, but in Japanese law, it's way more than that. It's a specific legal term, a trigger, that could actually authorize Japan's military to jump into a fight right alongside the U.S.
And China's reaction? They were absolutely furious. They accused Japan of challenging the post-war international order and even put out travel warnings. So let's connect the dots here. You've got this diplomatic crisis blowing up over Taiwan. At the exact same time, a U.S. missile system that can reach Beijing is parked just across the sea in Japan. You can see how that would look.
So, with that whole diplomatic mess as the backdrop, we can start to piece together the real reasons why the Typhoon was finally packed up and sent home. It looks like there are about 5 key factors that probably forced the U.S. and Japan to make a move.
All right, let's break them down. First, and this is the big one, de-escalating tensions with China. With everything going on with the Taiwan comments, leaving a weapon like that in Japan was like pouring gasoline on a fire. Second, they had to keep their word. Japan promised this was temporary, and leaving it there any longer would have really damaged their credibility. Third, you had protests on the ground. Local groups in Japan were not happy, worried that their home would become a primary target in a war. Fourth, they wanted to avoid looking like they were escalating things. The US already has a Typhon system in the Philippines, so adding another one in Japan starts to look less like defense and more like an offensive buildup. And finally, number 5 is just strategic flexibility. This is a mobile system, right? Its whole point is that it can be moved anywhere. So taking it out of Japan doesn't really weaken its overall power. It just repositions it.
But here's the thing. This whole story is about way more than just one missile system. What this incident really did was shine a huge spotlight on a major, fundamental shift happening in Japan's own defense strategy. It's a really big deal.
And this really gets to the heart of a huge dilemma for Tokyo. See, when Japan relies on U.S. gear like the Typhon, it's ultimately Washington that calls the shots. When it's used, where it's used, and, crucially, when it's taken away. This whole episode was a pretty stark reminder for them that a key part of their defense could just be removed for political reasons they can't control. That creates a really deep strategic dependence on the U.S.
And Japan is already making big moves to deal with this. To become more self-reliant, Tokyo is in the middle of buying 400 of its own Tomahawk cruise missiles from the U.S. You see the logic, right? They want the exact same capability, but they want it to be under their own command and control.
And this is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. It's not just about buying Tomahawks. Japan is also developing its own homegrown long-range missiles, they're pouring money into hypersonic weapons, and they're jacking up their defense spending to 2% of their GDP. All of this is happening while a very serious debate is going on inside Japan about changing Article 9, the famous pacifist clause in their constitution. Make no mistake, this is a nation that is rearming.
So that brings us full circle, but now we've got a totally new way of looking at it. The removal of a single American missile system has actually uncovered this much deeper, much more significant trend. And it leaves us with a really big question to think about. Is Japan, one of America's most important allies, quietly getting ready for a future where it might not always be able to rely on the U.S.?
And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Global War Watch Network. If you found this breakdown useful, please hit that like button, share it with someone who might be interested, and of course, subscribe. We really want to know what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to join our community on social media. All the links for that are right in the description. Thanks again for your time.